We are live! All right, welcome my friends. Excellent, we've got a fun day planned today. Oh, I've got echo. Let me turn that off. All right, are we good now? All right, I thought there was gonna be some bad echo. Looks like we fixed it. Welcome everybody. Got some people in the comments already. Awesome. We are doing a live feedback stream. It's the last stream of the month. Only stream of this month, actually. I'm sorry, I've gotten off my Friday streams. We have a record 13 submissions this week. Never had this many. I think the most I've ever gotten before was 9. So this blows it out of the water. We got 13 wonderful submissions. Together, we're going to listen to them, some wonderful requests. We're going to see what can be improved, what can be learned, and we're just going to have some fun sharing some incredible pieces. Welcome, E-Enthusiast, the Enthusiast. Welcome, Sensum. It's awesome to see you, Sensum. And Marius, welcome, my friends. We got some regulars, got some new faces. This should be fun. So, first up, we have... First, let me double check. Can you hear me? Looks like you can hear me. You can hear the piano. Wonderful. Excellent. So, first up, we have Pseudo Priet. Or is that supposed to be Pseudo Pirate? I spelled the name wrong. Pseudo Pirate requests, my main goal was to write melancholic music using just one melody and then repeating it through the whole song, but in a way that doesn't get boring. Mixing is a big problem for me now. Even after balancing, it had to make some different parts. It's hard to make the different parts of the track stay at the same volume without big jumps. Did I manage to do that? And also, do the instruments sound like they fit together, or do my reverb settings make them sound like they're in a different room? Additional information, I've been studying how to compose music for only a few months, and I want to thank you for your channel. It's pure gold. You've helped me improve my skills so much. Thank you, Pseudo Pirate. That's awesome that you're sharing your music so quickly. I'm excited to give it a listen. Sounds like the main issues here, we're going to ask about mixing. All right, let's give it a listen, shall we? Ooh, starting right off with the DSE Ray. Nice contrast. Beautiful piece. Incredible work. And for someone who's only been working for a couple months, that makes it even more impressive. Fantastic job, Pseudopirate. I am very grateful to have been able to help with you get started with your composing. Wonderful, wonderful first piece for sharing. Thank you. So before I get to the topics that you discussed, that you requested, I want to point out a couple of things that you did very, very well. All right, so one thing, especially with such a small arrangement, just mostly piano and cello, it sounds like, for the vast majority of this piece, one thing you did masterfully is providing contrast through texture, all right? This is something that many composers just seem to forget about. Texture is one of the strongest tools for providing contrast. John Williams uses texture all the time. Now, texture does not mean the number or types of instruments you use. That's timbre. Timbre refers to the types of instruments you used. If you take the melody and go from a trumpet to a trombone to a clarinet to a strings, that's changing timbre. Texture refers to the number and types of layers being used. So taking a simple melody, and then you're having melody and arpeggio versus melody and sustained string. So around here, I think is where we hear it. Arpeggio and melody. Then somewhere around here, you switch from arpeggio melody and like a bass line. There's like a pedal note in the piano that is an implied bass line. All right, that's an implied bass line with a boom. And then over here, you swap. Where is it? There we go. Sustained chords. That's a change in texture. You went from arpeggio and melody and bass line to strong sustained chords. That's a shift in texture, and it's a fantastic way to create nuance with a piece with limited resources. John Williams does this all the time. He will just change the types of layers and articulations being used. So fantastic instinct and use for that. Wonderful work. Creating this large shift in size was another incredible way to build the energy for the piece. Again, creating contrast. There are 9 parameters in music I talk about. Rhythm, tempo, texture, timbre, articulations, dynamics, harmony, melody, and I should have written them down because I don't know which one I'm leaving out. I want to say register with the number of octaves. Those are all different parameters of music, and you can use each of them to manipulate energy and provide contrast. You do that wonderfully here. Now, a couple of notes for improvement. At 135, I don't know if this is supposed to still be the cello. Because up to this point, we've only had piano and cello playing. So if this is the cello doing double stops, unfortunately, this just isn't how double stops typically get used. This isn't a very realistic use. String players don't often harmonize themselves with counter melodies. It brings all too many issues. If this is envisioned as 2 string players, 2 soloists, perfectly fine. But if it's a cello player performing double stops, that's probably not going to work out well. Not for a live performance. So you'd want to have that be 2 players. In terms of the mix, which is what you requested, you request questions about the mix. Sounds good. You could probably bump the volume a little bit. I've got SoundCloud almost maxed volume right now, and it still felt very, very soft. So adding a little bit of compression. I have a video on compression if you want, Tabletop Composer. If you guys are ever curious about something, I've been doing this for so long. Just look up my name and, see, applying compression, mixing 101. And then type in your question. Tabletop Composer, comma, whatever you're trying to do. Let's see. Augmented 6. Right here. How to modulate with the German Augmented 6 chords. We do jazz chords. You get the point. All right. Well, I have a couple videos. That looks like a short from Instagram. That's a weird photo. But yeah, so I've covered so many things. So you could probably bump the overall volume a little bit. Compression would be helpful for that. Or you could just increase the gain by like going into your stereo out and just saying, hey, I just want this whole thing to be 10 decibels louder. Boom, just like that. That one's a little riskier, so I always recommend compression instead. Your reverb could be a little wetter. All right. So reverb, I talked about videos. With reverb, right now, you have a very, very dry reverb. Sounds like it's a electronic piano. Either an electronic piano or something that's been... Uh-oh. My computer. It seems to have frozen. Hopefully the stream didn't freeze. Uh-oh. Ah, there we go. All right, so then we can go to, like, for example, here, just find a basic piano. Now, world, we'll do band, electric pianos. I don't want an electric piano. Oh, here we go. Acoustic pianos. So this is probably going to be a very dry piano. Let's turn the reverb off. That sounds very, very dry. All right. If we add just a little bit of reverb, it creates a much more realistic sound. So I would recommend, if you're going for a concert hall type feel, let's pick a random hall. Let's do medium hall. If you're going for a concert hall feel, I'd say about 20 to 25% mix tends to work. We'll say 22% tends to work really well. And anywhere from 1.5 to 3 seconds for your tail tends to work. Let's create just a 2-second tail. Tends to work really well for just creating a beautiful, beautiful kind of simple reverb. So super dry, reverb on. You can hear that little ring out a little bit. Very natural, very subtle. That works well. So I would add a little longer of a tail to your reverb for the mix. And then something else that you don't do much of is I would use your sustain pedal. What is this? This is from an old stream. This looks like a sketch. All right, so that works. This is our idea. So we have that little idea. If you add just a little bit of a sustain pedal, so watch what I'm going to do under here. I'm going to have my sustain pedal. I'm obviously playing it with my foot. Just adding a little bit of sustain is going to bring so much more personality to this. Let's bring over my controls. I will hit record. No sustain pedal. Adding sustain. All right, so just a little bit of sustain, allowing those notes to bleed into each other a little bit, would help bring a lot more personality to your piano as well. Piano is very, very rarely played without pedals. Oftentimes, the pedals don't get notated, in which case the piano player is free to just use whatever kind of sustain pattern they want, whatever feels natural. But at some point, they will have some kind of sustain. So if you want a realistic performance on the piano, you're going to want to include the sustain in there. Fantastic job, PseudoPirate. I'm going to move on just because we have a lot of these to get through. Let me check the comments real quick. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. There we go. Let's see. This is lovely. So people are loving it. Wonderful, wonderful. People enjoy it. Stereo Imager 2. A little wilderness. Somewhat. Okay, so Tamashi offering some mixing advice. Thank you, Tamashi. How does B over G work in the key of D? Asks Shib Shankar. That sounds like a question for a live stream lesson. Unfortunately, I don't have. We don't focus too much on music theory during these streams, regardless of how they apply to the music, or like outside of how they apply to individual pieces. So if you got questions, Shib Shankar, I work with you as a student. So if anyone ever has questions, I do private lessons, or you can save them for another live stream where I can address them live. But during the live feedback streams, we focus on providing feedback. All right, let me cross that out. Whoops, wrong button. Cross that out. All right, Dead Fella. Link to music. Request. Does this need more movement? Good question. We'll find out. Let's give it a listen. Now, first I should mention, movement is one of the key elements of emotion music. It comes down to size, valence, and energy, or movement. I'll discuss those a little bit afterwards, but this kind of question has a lot more to do with personal taste rather than actual like objective critique. So in order to provide a fair feedback on this, I would have to know what you're going for. So I will try to do my best, though. I'll share what I think works with this piece, and we'll see. Let's give it a listen.
From taco night in Tulum to sushi in Tokyo.
All right, muting until the advertisement is over. But let's see. So, yeah, I'll talk about size, energy, and movement afterwards. Oh, we got 2 ads. I'm sorry, my eye is itchy. I'm rubbing my eye. So, emotions and music come down to 3 things. Valence, size, and energy. I've been saying this for years. Valence has to do with how dark or bright your emotion is. Size has to deal with how overwhelming versus intimate your emotion is. And energy or movement has to do with how physically expressive is it. How obvious is it to tell from watching someone's body language that they are experiencing this emotion. Another way to think about it is how much energy your emotion gives or takes from you. Here we go. If you can describe those 3 things for your emotion, then you can write music that follows the same description. I'll go into this in a bit more detail, but let's listen to Sleepless Night by Dead Fella. Another Dies Irae reference. Was not expecting that. Dude, that was incredible. I love that. In terms of movement, I don't think this piece needs more movement. first off, I like that. That was a beautiful vibe. All right, the music was very symmetrical. The arrangement, I love that hybrid sound. The guitar was incredible. It worked beautifully at the center of this whole piece. It did a very good job of setting just an incredibly, it gave off like Death Note vibes. You guys know what I mean? Like, it gave off like more modern, like, I think it was just the combination of like the orchestra and like the harmony and the guitar. It gave off very similar like vibes to like the soundtrack of Death Note, which I love. A couple tips. So first off, the low end. At the very beginning, you have this beautiful kind of deep basses in the foreground. They're playing the melody, and it sounds a bit muddy. Which is unfortunately one of the reasons why the lower voices are very rarely used to perform the melody. Let's play a little part. We'll see if we can, I'll point it out. Not yet. It's starting to come in. There they are. Right there, right there. 25 seconds. You have the cello and the basses are doubling each other. And at one point, they split in different directions. The cello move up in pitch, the basses move down in pitch, and that's where the mud comes in. So while there's room for that kind of thing, you don't want to do it when the basses are playing the melody or the foreground. In this case, it might be a bass line, but whatever it is, it's the foreground. It's the idea that we're focusing on the most. When you are playing this low, where is it? Let's just add a library. When you are playing instruments this low, the impact of the overtone series becomes super big, all right? Playing this low, you have a lot of competing frequencies. What's going on here? That's not what I want playing. This I want. Why is this one playing? I don't know. All right, so playing the melody this low. You can actually hear this sounds like it might be doubled in octaves already. I think this is already doubled in octaves, which is unfortunate because that's not what it's supposed to be. But down here, if you're going to be playing the bass that low, I recommend just keeping the cello doubled an octave higher. What this is going to do is it's going to help reinforce the harmonics of the bass and make the melody much more clear. If you try to get a little too complex with your multiple layers, it's just going to result in a muddy quality. So you can actually hear that happen in real time. Listen to those lower basses and hear how it sounds clear, it sounds nice, until those celli diverge. Those cellos move up in pitch while the basses move down, and suddenly it loses its clarity, it becomes much muddier. It's over here. It's around the 25-second marker. Right there, you have to, so they split in opposite directions. So they're harmonizing, which isn't bad, but if you're gonna have that bass voice that low, around like the C2 octave area, like the low C octave, keep at least one voice an octave higher, softly playing to help reinforce it. I guess that's the takeaway behind all that. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please leave a comment. I'll try to explain it a bit more clearer. Long story short, if you want those deep, low voices around the low C octave playing the melody or the foreground, double an octave higher. And then if you want more harmonies, you can add a third voice that does the different kind of harmonizing, but just that octave is very important for reinforcing the harmonics and making sure that it stays sticking out. So you have a very similar issue around 1 minute and 57 seconds. The brass enter and they immediately start clashing with the guitar. It sounds great. I like the addition of the brass. They add power, they add presence, but it immediately muddies up your sound. And it's because the brass and the guitar are fighting for attention. Two things you could do. You could try panning them a bit more strongly, so like the guitar is on one side of the stereo field and the brass is on the other, so they don't clash as much. Or, very simply, you can just revoice the brass a little bit lower and the guitar a little higher. Or you could do the opposite. Put the guitar down, bring the brass up higher. Something to get them into separate registers, separate octaves, and it'll clean out that effect a lot better. Again, beautiful ideas, just causing a little bit of mud. Now, so something that people want to, just to define that term mud, that's a term that gets used a lot. When people describe a mix as being muddy or music as being muddy, but they're basically saying is it lacks clarity. And clarity is ease of digestion, the ability to hear it and understand the music, to be able to tell that's the melody, I understand it, it feels intuitive. If music doesn't feel intuitive, then it's described as being muddy. It's busy, it's cluttered, there's a lot going on, and we're not able to sit back and absorb it, if that makes sense. So yeah, Tamashii, yes, mud in a mix is often described as about the 300 to 500 hertz, but I talk more about like the impact of what it has on the music. So yeah, there's always technical term explanations for like, yes, this is what this refers to, but I like to talk in musical terms. If you've got a muddy mix, a muddy arrangement, it just means that it lacks clarity, that it's challenging and it takes you out of the experience. You can think of it as like a bump. You're driving on a smooth road, bam, you hit a bump, you noticed something that was there that wasn't supposed to be there, in other words. But wonderful work, Deadfella. Incredible piece. Love the vibes. Well done. Let's continue on, shall we? All right, Marius. Oops. Marius, what recommendations do you have for improving my thematic development? Additional information, I often feel my writing involves too much looping, maybe as a result of working entirely in DAW when writing, and a lot of my music ends up feeling like I play a melody, repeat it, add a B theme, repeat it, and then end. So I'd like to get some direction on how to stretch my skills in this area to add more variety to my music. Awesome! Very, very simple solution for this, but I will address it after we listen to your piece. Love that cello line. Marius, that was fantastic. That was beautiful. You do a lot of things really, really well here. You did a fantastic job using texture and timbre and several other, and using registers to create contrast. This is a skill that John Williams has mastered, all right? So you asked specifically, saying that you feel like your music gets too much of a loop, all right? That you play a melody, you repeat it, add a B theme, repeat it, and then end. That's just musical structure. All right, so most musical structures rely on a lot of repetition. Musical structures / forms in this context refer to the number and order of themes used in a piece. For example, one very common structure is AABA. You describe something called ternary form, which goes A theme, B theme, A theme. We have binary form, which is AABB. We have rounded binary form, which is AABA, which we mentioned up here. There's rondo form, which goes A, B, A, C, A, where each letter refers to a different melody. So melody A, then you do melody B, then you go back to melody A, you introduce melody C, and go back to melody A one more time. So the idea of repeating melodies is not inherently poor. This is actually just ingrained into music. This is the point of most music, is to repeat your ideas. Repetition breeds, it legitimizes your ideas as being themes. Even things like sonata form has very classical structure, has very specific order in which the themes appear, the number of themes and the orders in which they appear. What you do really well here, and what other composers have mastered, like John Williams, is the use of musical parameters other than just the type of themes and structure to introduce contrast. All right, there are 9 musical parameters. All right, you have tempo, texture, timbre, rhythm, register, dynamics, articulations. I did register already. Harmony and melody. All right, these 9 parameters are what you use as the basis of all your musical decision making, especially contrast. So this is something you did very, very beautifully. You're like, all right, here's my melody. I'm going to repeat my melody, and this time I'm going to change the texture, the type of accompaniment it has. I'm going to change the instruments playing it. The melody's going to go from up here to down here. Gonna get louder, gonna get softer, gonna go from staccato to legato, gonna reharmonize a little bit. You have all of these different tools to help develop your themes. A more Germanic approach to music, a very classical approach to music, was what we call thematic development, chopping up the melody, swapping it upside down, putting it in different orders. You can definitely do that. If you want to learn more tools for that, look up Tabletop Composer, Motivic Development. I have a whole breakdown, developing motifs, how to develop, this one, developing motifs, part 2, 20-minute video. This breaks down a lot of the traditional classical strategies for developing an ideas. A more romantic approach, referring to the romantic era of like portraying emotions musically, being self-expressive with music, had less to do with chopping up your music and seeing all the different things you could do with it structurally, and more with the expressive nature of the music itself, creating different emotional journeys using things like texture, timbre, register, dynamics, articulations, harmony. This is something that John Williams has. This is a lot of music that you can see. For example, a lot of people here are fans of the Skyrim soundtrack. If you've ever listened to the Skyrim soundtrack played on piano, it's horrifically dull, very boring, super repetitive, unless you have a really good arrangement on piano where someone accounts for changes in texture and register and things like that. But it's just super repetitive. Most of the interest, most of the contrast comes from the gradual shifts in instruments being used, the adding and subtracting of different layers, the moving the melody to different octaves, the subtle shifts in harmony, things like that. These all give interest. So you're doing very, very well. If you want to get out of the practice of ternary form, of just ABA, then I just recommend looking up different forms. You could do ABA. So AABA, that's rounded binary. You could do AABB, that's regular binary. You could do rondo form. We could do what we call like an arch form, where you go A, B, C, C, B, A. There's all different kinds of things you can do. You could do through composed, which is a little bit more challenging to keep interesting and cohesive, but you do different theme after different theme after different theme. There's lots of different areas, but what really makes music interesting is learning how to use these other parameters to add contrast and development, not just by developing your melody, if that makes sense. Hopefully that helps. Wonderful job, Marius. I think Marius is in this chat. Wonderful. Thank you. I hope that was helpful. Let's keep moving because we do have a large number of people to get through. Pascal Normand. Is this too repetitive? Is there a rise in energy? And does it fit the trailer? Ooh, we've got trailer music here. Wonderful. Glad it was helpful, Marius. All right, let's listen to Pascal's.
We're in a war. You want to fight?
Nice. Beautiful piece. I enjoyed that. Very rhythmic. Your sound design was awesome. You had some really cool ideas. You had a nice, strong rhythmic beat. It helped set the mood a little bit. One thing I'll say is it didn't quite fit the trailer. All right? And I'm not talking about style or genre because that's not quite as important. What this piece lacks, although it's well done by itself, if it was just a standalone piece, I think it was awesome. But as far as it goes as media music designed to accompany something, it didn't quite fit. And it's because you lacked something called the physical function of media music. So for those of you who don't know, media music has three primary functions. It has psychological, physical, and technical. You lacked the physical function, which is a pretty important one. There are a couple different parameters for the physical function. One is how the music sets the scene in terms of like, does it evoke a certain time period? Does it evoke a certain setting? Things like that. That's not quite what I'm talking about here. That one's not as important as how does the music match to the visuals? All right? Specifically, does it, to meet the physical function, music must match the internal contour of the scene it accompanies. So contour, all right? If we think about this, another you might have heard as something called hit points are moments when a shift or event in the music matches or syncs with a shift or event in the visuals / story. This is what your music lacked. At no point did I feel, until the very end it has a bit of it, but at no point did I feel like the music was matching these moments. Now that doesn't mean you have to match the camera cuts. I've had students in the past who get that confused, that every time the camera cuts to a different thing, that has to be matched to the music. No. Contour in visual storytelling, in media music, refers to one or more of three things. All right? A shift in emotion, a shift in energy, and or a shift in plot circumstances. All right? So how does a moment... So if the emotions of a scene shift, things were nice and happy, now they're tense. If energy starts ramping up, or a shift in plot circumstances, which basically means we change the direction that the story is moving in. At one point, we thought the story was going in this direction. Something happened. Oh, now it's going in a different direction. These are three key moments to look for anytime you're scoring a scene, because these are key opportunities for hit points. Moments where something in the music matches this. These could be moments where you change harmony. You could modulate to a new key, for example. You could add a different melody. You could have a drum hit. You could have all these different things. But a real key component of media composition is identifying these moments. Now, trailer music in and of itself tends to have its own structure. But these hit points are what provide the structure for media music in general. We talked about musical structure just a moment ago, about a number and order of themes. Film music is has something called the principle of subordination, which is a fancy way of saying that the structure of your music comes from the media itself, from the story itself. It's not a pre-existing structure. It's a structure that makes sense for the story. If you want to learn more about this, I have a class I did with the Indie Film Music Contest, the IFMC. They have a class that I designed for them on film composing that you can check out that breaks down all this in significant more detail. But what I would do for applying this is when you watch a trailer, make notes of where things shift, all right? Where does the mood get darker / brighter? Where does the size feel like it gets bigger or smaller? And where does the energy / movement increase or decrease? These are three great spots. I just mentioned earlier in the stream that these three things, valence, which describes how dark or bright something is, size, and energy are the three pillars of emotion in music. So if you can identify where these things shift, all you have to do is match the music. All right, in a moment, okay, the trailer just got darker. Okay, how can we make the music feel darker at this point? Things just got bigger. There's explosions. The camera angle panned out, and now we're seeing wide establishing shots instead of close-ups. How do we make the music feel bigger? The cuts are shooting by super fast. How can we increase, how can we make the energy in the music increase? If you're looking for a good book that breaks this down, I've got a massive bookshelf next to me. Give me a second. Ben Newhouse's Creative Strategies in Film. Okay, yeah, here it is. Berkeley Press, Ben Newhouse's book, Creative Strategies in Film Scoring. Fantastic introduction to just creating a workflow for film scoring. And he has, look at this, page 125, whole page on tracking contour, looking for things. And he mentions he's got a whole list of tools. You can increase the instrumentation. You can decrease the instrumentation. You can change the instrument playing the melody. You can change your scale type. You can move your tonic or modulate, increase dissonance, decrease dissonance. He's got a huge list of tools you can do to help match those shifts in contour. So that would be the number one thing I would prioritize, Pascal. You've got great music. It's got a great style, a great feel. I think you've got your craft for that down pat. You can always improve, but you've got a nice solid foundation. If you really want to improve your ability to fit the trailer, focus on learning about contour. Again, Creative Solutions in Film Scoring. It's a cheap book. Highly recommend it. You can probably find it in a library. Check out my class, Introduction to Film Scoring, on the Indie Film Music Contest's website. And yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that. Hope that was helpful. Thank you for sharing your music, my friend. Well done. Unfortunately, as a heads up, anyone who watches this stream afterwards, you probably didn't hear any of that because YouTube does immediately like remove the audio from anything that accompanies copyrighted material. So that trailer, unless I think trailers are technically supposed to be, like we're supposed to be able to use that stuff just fine on YouTube, but then, you know, YouTube's not very good about that kind of stuff. They just punish first, ask questions later. But yes, so hopefully that was helpful. Oh, hey, Pascal's here. Wonderful. Okay, wonderful. So I did come through. Wonderful. Let's see. Sonic Narrative. No requests from Sonic Narrative. I remember I sent an email asking for some specific requests. In the future, if you guys submit music, make sure you have a specific request if you want to get some detailed feedback. But additional notes, I've been watching your videos and learning from you for a while now. While I'm a hobbyist and this is only my second track, I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on it to see what you think. Awesome. Thank you so much for submitting your second piece. That's huge. Way to go. It takes guts to share, all right? Especially when you're this new. Let's give it a listen and see what we can provide. I like that. Dude, that was insane. Okay, I don't think I believe you. I don't think that's just your second track ever, but that was awesome. So there's not much to offer at this point, all right? Since you didn't ask for anything specific, I'm not going to provide anything specific about the composition itself. Instead, I'm going to say the biggest improvement that you could do to this was to work on your mix. The biggest issue with your mix, because it was well balanced for the most part. There was a couple things that were a little loud here and there. The biggest thing that you could work on is your reverb. So what you have is a combination of what we're going to call wet and dry libraries. So wet and dry refers to, in this case, the reverb. How much room do you hear versus instrument? So this is let's play the piano. This is a very dry piano. It's only piano. You don't hear any room. And if we take our reverb and we crank it all the way up, this is all room. This is the impact of the piano bouncing around. So what reverb does is it imitates the impact of a room on your sound. So when you think about it, music and sound waves hit your ears in about 3 distinct waves. The first is called direct sound. These are the sound waves that travel directly from the source to your ears without any interference. So directly from the piano to your ears. That's the direct sound. Next, we have what we call early reflections, which are sounds that bounce off a couple surfaces before reaching your ear. And then the tail, or the reverb, the sounds that bounce off multiple surfaces before reaching your ear. And thus, they sound a little more colored. That's all reverb. The mix refers to which percentage of your sound is direct versus reverb. So if I say a mix of 20%, this is 80% of the sound waves hitting your ears are direct sounds. 20% are reverb. And that's what creates a very realistic sounding noise. What you have right now, you have a combination of very dry instruments. Like your strings are pretty dry. Your brass are pretty dry. And then you have super like wet synths with lots of reverb. And so what this creates is this juxtaposition of sounds that separate the piano to the left and the strings to the right, of sounds that for all intents and purposes sound like they were recorded in 2 different rooms. See how that works? That the panning here is a bit strong and a bit much, but you get the idea. So they sound like each of your instruments were recorded in a different room. The single best thing you could do to elevate this and take it to the next level would be to work on that reverb. So once again, Tabletop Composer, reverb. I have an entire playlist on mixing, but the video how to use reverb in a mix would probably do you very well for just helping add that extra little level of polish to make it all sound a bit more uniform and clear. But well done, my friend. Fantastic job. And since you didn't have any specifics, we'll end it there. Marcos Guerin requests, does the orchestration feel balanced? Does the harmony support the mood? Is the melody strong enough? And what specific areas would you suggest I improve or modify? Thank you so much for your time. Additional information. My name is Marcos Guerin, and I'm a composer from Argentina. First of all, I want to say how much I admire your work. Your content is incredibly inspiring and has truly motivated me to write more music. Thank you. That makes me really happy. Producing high-quality music in my country can be tough due to limited resources, and since I live in a small town far from the capital, breaking into the main music scene is a challenge. However, my ultimate dream is to become a film score composer inspired by legends like Gustavo Santaolalla, I'm sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, Ryuichi Sakamoto, Hans Zimmer, and Joe Hisaishi. As an accordionist, ooh, I love the accordion. My roots are in regional folk music, but I'm currently experimenting with fusing folk traditions with ambient and cinematic textures. That sounds awesome. Let's give it a listen and see what we can provide, what we can do to help.
Just joined YouTube Shopping. Now, how do I cash in?
No tags, no bags.
This.
It begins with...
Oh, that's beautiful. Marcos, that was beautiful. I loved that. Wow. Okay, so I have some thoughts that I can share on how a couple things to help improve it. Again, just little detail work, but this is fantastic. Your style is incredible. I love what you're doing already, and I think the fusion of the synths and the soundscapes and the folk music, it's unique, it's gorgeous, well done. Now, first, before I address that, I have some questions in the chat asking, hey, Paulo, thank you very much. But say, I have the question, which genres of music are eligible for view? All genres. People are welcome to share anything. I just ask nothing explicit, just because I'm not looking to get punished by YouTube or anything. So if it's explicit lyrics or anything like that, you're welcome to share any genre of music. Just if they're explicit lyrics, I ask that you send a censored version, just because it saves me a headache from getting in trouble with YouTube. And someone, Apollo, can I still send something? Unfortunately, not yet, not at the moment. The deadline to submit was last night at midnight Detroit time, and it's specifically for that reason. I have to watch and listen to everything through just to make sure that nothing explicit, nothing bad, nothing that'll get me in trouble with YouTube is in the music. Because I've had some people submit things where it was very clear they weren't submitting any extra music. There were some lewd links and stuff. So there's a reason why there's rules and everything involved. I'm trying to keep things nice and clean on this channel. So, but the next one, it's always the last Friday of the month. So the next one will be July 31st, unless I have to reschedule, but I'll always let you guys know. Submissions will open the 27th, so set a reminder in your email, in your calendars or whatever. Now, with that, Marcos, wonderful work. I love the soundscape. I think you did really well with... There's a lot of stuff that's doing really well in here. Some things that you could do. There are a couple moments where you cut the tail off of your instruments. And it creates, you cut off the release, which is super important for the instruments. And it creates this little stunted effect. I think one example I put down was like 1 minute and 14 seconds. You hear the music kind of clips a bit early. It sounds like the music got chopped. So it might have been a bit of a gating effect. Right there. Did you hear that? So that was in the soundscape that time. Okay, so if your soundscape sample is only like 1 minute, 22 seconds, something super simple you can do to fix that is just something called crossfading. You take 2 tracks, overlap them slightly. You do volume, and you just have one increase in volume, while the other decreases in volume. It's a fantastic way to just have this one slowly get increased and this one increase. It helps blend your soundscape so it sounds more seamless and it doesn't have those little breaks in the middle. All right. I loved what you were doing with the panning and the exploring of moving elements around sonically. That is fantastic. Super creative use of your space. Fantastic job. One thing that I think, a couple things that could be used to help improve this. I think your next step is just, again, like our previous friend, start focusing more on your mix. So mixing, basic mixes have 3 elements that are super important. You have the balance, which is volume. You have the panning, and you have reverb. You did balance pretty well for the most part. There were a couple moments that were a little loud, a couple moments that were too soft. Panning was really well done. The last little thing is reverb. There are moments where, like I mentioned with the cross-fading for your sound scape, there are a couple moments where instruments just lacked a release. So here we have a synth. We have a nice little kick. All right, so you'll notice on here, I have a release of about a quarter second. That means when I let go of my keyboard, it doesn't immediately stop the noise. It lets it fade out slightly over the course of a quarter second. If I turn that down to 0, or let's see, I've got reverb on. Let's turn the reverb off. If I turn the reverb off and I turn that off, we're going to hear it sounds a lot clunkier. a lot more stunted. If I increase that release to about 1/4 of a second, well, here it sounds a little more natural. If I keep increasing that, it has a little bit longer. Well, it's not going to get much longer than my decay. But it has a very subtle effect. It's the same where if I were to create, let's just create a very simple piano synth. All right. Let's just do a saw wave. Why is this not working? Oh, I gotta do this. Got a nice little saw wave. Let's add a nice little decay. Sustain at 0. All right. We have a nice little natural release. About let's do half a second. So that when I release the music, it rings out very subtly. If I turn this all the way down, you hear it cuts it. That's what a lot of your instruments were doing. If we bring up Absinthe 6, it has a nifty little visualization of this for us, actually. Let's do a new one. If we go to our envelope, you can actually see this right here is my release. That little line travels and shows the volume. There's a release. If I shorten this, we see that it happens much quicker. A lot of your instruments have different moments where they have this little clip. You want to make sure that they still have a little bit of a release to make it sound more natural and performable. If you are working with acoustic instruments, a lot of that comes from, again, your reverb. So there's no reverb on here. Add a little bit of reverb. And there's that little tail in there. So again, learning to mix would be very, very helpful. I have Tabletop Composer. Let's go to my website. If you go to my Academy page, you'll see I have 3 classes, and one of them is the fundamentals of mixing, the basics of high-quality mixes. Completely free class to sign up for. My Academy is all free classes. I've got 2 more coming up in the next couple months. That will be starting release after the last episode of Intro to Synths and Sound Design drops. I will start releasing the first episodes of reading and writing sheet music. But that will be the next thing to take this to the next level, Marcos. It's going to help you clean it up slightly. You're going to learn a lot to help clean it, but this is generally a very beautiful piece. Trying to see if there's anything else. But no, yeah, crossfading, figuring out your reverb a little bit better, that's all going to help tremendously. Fantastic job, my friend. Thank you for sharing. And well done. So, let me take a sip. Let me open another one. This is a Red Thunder by Aldi. It's 100 milligrams of caffeine, which is nice. Guys, this is going to be a long stream. I've been doing this for an hour already, and we got like another hour to go. Let's see here. Kudakashi. Anyone here had problems with sensitive hearing? I've been having a hard time listening to loud sounds. It started when I was making my previous track. I just thought it caused by using headphones. Possibly. It depends on how loud you are. I would really Google safe volume levels for headphones. 70 decibels both. Stick to that. You don't want to damage your ears, my friend. You really, really don't. The enjoyment of loud music isn't worth losing years of your hearing. So yeah, I would keep it a bit quieter. Sorry to hear that you're having some issues with that. Theo Triton, my question would be, how do I make my orchestrations more coherent? I feel like everything feels a bit too disjointed and prevents the track from being epic and big. Additional information, I'm a student in video game music and I just finished my first year. Your channel has been really helpful for me to learn new stuff outside of my classes. I really appreciate you do. Wonderful, that makes me really happy. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be of help. Oh, Kudakashi, you were the one I just responded to in the comments. Let's go back. Theo, let's listen to Theo's music and share some thoughts. Dude, well done. That was fun. So to answer your question right off the bat, no, I don't think it sounds too disjuncted. If anything, I feel like you could actually benefit from moving your timbres around a little bit. You have a tendency to keep rolls in instruments. The violins were constantly the ones playing the fast or ostinati. The brass were the ones playing the sustained sustained chords, and the singer was the one doing the melody. You'll notice that in a lot of film music and a lot of classical music and a lot of other styles, those roles aren't as quite defined. The melody gets passed around to a lot of different instruments. The harmony gets passed around quite a bit too. Those roles switch. So you could actually benefit from moving around a lot more frequently. One way, and this will answer your question, like how do you make sure that your orchestration is more coherent, and how do you make it, can move it around a bit more? One of the easiest ways is to start by analyzing your favorite music. Yes, I know analyzing music isn't as wonderful for everybody, but you also, it doesn't need to be complicated. My favorite method for analyzing / studying music. Really, really simple, all right? It does not need to be intensive, deep. One of the most useful ones is start with a recording of your favorite piece and break it down into timestamps that make sense to you. These don't have to be official. They're just moments like, all right, this works. I think this is a chunk. I think this is a chunk. This is a chunk, etc. As you study, you listen to each segment on repeat. Take notes on how many layers do you hear. So like melody, chords, bass line, etc. Which instruments are playing them? And honestly, anything else you think is interesting. That's really it. Those are the only two questions you really need. This is going to help a lot. Yes, you could go deeper. You could break down the harmony. You could break down the melody. You could break down rhythmic tools, all that. There's all kinds of things you can do. But if you basically just tackle the texture, which is what layers are being used at any given point and which instruments are playing them, and anything else you think is interesting that just like grabs your attention, like, oh, I really liked that he doubled the harp with the marimba at this point or whatever. this information is going to teach you so much. I'm actually doing this currently. So I told you I'm building 2 new free classes, one on reading, writing sheet music, and then one on creating realistic MIDI performances. After that, I'm going to slow down my posting schedule a little bit to just like 1 video per month, and I'm going to start really focusing on templates. So one piece I'm studying is Across the Stars. I'm writing a template on how to write music like John Williams' Across the Stars. So this section starts from 12 seconds to 55 seconds, basically. There's an A melody gets repeated with a variation, then a B theme. So this is what we call binary form. In this section, I hear the first melody is oboe, there's an arpeggio in the harp, chords played by strings, bass line played by strings. Melody repeats, it's the same idea, just the dynamics get a bit louder. Then the B theme comes in. Now it sounds like the oboe, flute, and bassoon are being played. The arpeggio now has strings, I'm assuming viola added to it, and chords and bass line are still strings. Then the B theme gets returned, same basic structure, but the flute moves an octave higher, and it sounds like the double basses join the bass line with pizzicato while everything swells before we come back down. All right? Extra note things I noticed. Here, the primary strategy for growth seems to be size, adding new instruments and octaves while building dynamics and leaving the texture relatively stable. This particular left thing is all about manipulating size. All right? So this is notes, and then I can just continue with the other sections, taking whatever notes I can and learning from it. If you start adopting this method and just practice it, just 1 piece a month, that's all you got to do. Pick a piece, study each month, and then make a list of all the big takeaways. At the end, write a list of all the things you learned from this piece that you want to remember. And it could be something as simple as like, hey, I can actually move my melody around in different instrument families. That's cool. I hadn't thought of that. I didn't realize I have permission to do that. That's one of the cool things you can do. You just find little things that you learn. That's going to help tremendously. All right, but well done, Theo. Sounds beautiful, very cinematic. I enjoyed it. Well done. Let's move on. Quick look at the contexts. The little part is very well finished. What's the queue? There are 12 songs in the queue. 13 submissions this time, which is the highest number of submissions I've had for a stream before. How about you? Hey, can you review my music, please? It's singer and songwriter stuff. I would love to. Just next month. I unfortunately, because I have to make sure I review each music at least once before the live stream, just to make sure there's nothing inappropriate. Like I said, I've had people submit things that are in the past that was like, okay, they're just trying to like prank me with stuff, with videos they want me to try to put up on a live stream. I'm very careful about that. So unfortunately, I do not accept live submissions. Just because I have to make sure that I'm not putting anything on screen that's going to get me in trouble with YouTube. But I do these every month. So, if you want to submit your singer-songwriter submission, I am happy to do that. The next one will be July 31st. So set your calendar for the 27th. That's when submissions accept. I do a maximum of 15 per live stream, just because this is probably going to take me like 2-3 hours to get through. But I'm always happy to do any kind of genre of music. But Kudakashi, is the melody clear enough? I had problems mastering this track. It was clipping, perhaps because of the drums, and I wasn't sure how to stop the clipping and still make the track louder. Any ideas? That's gonna be compression. All right, right off the bat, I can answer that. Tabletop Composer, compression. I'm getting a lot of mileage out of this Mixing 101 class for this stream. How to balance your... No, not that. Applying compression. Applying compression, that's the video you want. It's going to help with that. Is there a good balance between drums and other instruments? If not, how do I get that balance in terms of volume? How to balance your tracks properly. That's another one from the intro to mix. So just take my free intro mix class. Again, tabletopcomposer.com, education. I have private lessons that you can sign up for, but I also have a free academy with free classes designed to help you get your basis in composition. So let's give it a listen, shall we? Can you tell I'm a Midwesterner? dude, well done. Beautiful piece, very fun, very cinematic. Yes, your questions about the clipping and finding the balance, my free class on mixing will help that quite a bit. And is your melody clear enough? Yeah, it works really, really well. The brass handled it beautifully. The strings had that wonderful ostinato. It's great. Now, for those of you who have similar questions about whether your melodies are clear enough, this issue of clarity, I talked about it earlier in the stream. It's the idea of how intuitive is your music for a listener. If you've ever listened to music, you're like, I don't get this, I don't like it, it's just hard to get in the groove, it's because it lacks clarity, 9 times out of 10. Now, clarity in music comes from 3 things. It comes from separation, focus, and balance. All right, separation equals the ability, to tell apart the different layers of your music. So the ability to say like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the bass line, those are the chords, that's the melody. The idea that each layer of your music has its own identity. All right? So they each stick out as their own little idea. It's the reason why every line of a chord progression doesn't sound like a separate layer. It just sounds like chords. Or a melody sounds like a melody, but the counter melody sounds like the counter melody. Now, there are lots of things that determine separation, none of which we have time to go into for right now. So if you want, Tabletop Composer, 3 pillars, just look that up. 3 pillars of strong orchestration. This video right here will explain it for you. But after separation, we have the idea of focus, which is the separate layers of your music are organized into a hierarchy of foreground, background, and midground. All right, the idea that at any given point, the audience knows which layer they're supposed to listen to intuitively, which one is the main focus. And then balance is once separation and focus have been achieved, all layers are of relatively comparable power. So your bass line is just about as strong as your melody, which is just about as strong as your chords, which is just about as strong as your counter melody, etc. There's this misconception that a lot of beginner composers have that the melody is the most important, so it should be the most powerful. No. It should be equally powerful. Otherwise, your music sounds wonky and out of balance. The idea that your melody feels the strongest and has the foreground has nothing to do with balance and much more to do with focus and separation. Again, this video, the 3 pillars of strong orchestration, will give you a much deeper understanding of that, and you can find that video as part of my free class, Fundamental Arranging Techniques. All right? Well done, Kudakashi. Hope that helps. I mean, I wasn't able to provide too much for you. I think you're just doing a very good job. For you, again, I can see how that could hurt your hearing, though, if you're listening to that too loudly. So, yeah, pull it back about 70 decibels maximum. Usually try to keep it on the quieter side. Give yourself breaks from listening to music. If you do a lot of stuff in your studio, go for walks without earbuds in, work out without your earbuds in, give your ears a break. They need to rest so that you're not damaging yourself, so you don't lose your hearing or start to have hearing issues. But then you, again, my friend, check out for the other answers to your questions, Fundamentals of Mixing, the basic high-quality mixes. This free class on my website, it'll help answer the issues of clipping and finding balance. All right, wonderful. Moving on. Numero 9. A.K. Miller, 1975. Request, I would like feedback on my orchestral programming, my mockup. So basically, does this sound realistic? And if not, what can be improved? That was lovely. That was a fun little waltz. Thank you, AK Miller. Before I get to feedback on that, I see Welcome to the Dark Side 69. How do I submit music? So submissions for today's stream are closed, but the next one will be July 31st. You are welcome to submit for then. Just send your music to my email, tabletopcomposer@gmail.com. All pieces need to be 4 minutes or shorter, or if they're longer, you can just give me a one single timestamp for 4 minutes consecutive. So I don't do jump around it. Just give me 4 minutes of the piece to listen to, and then give me a specific thing you would like feedback on. Submissions for July 31st will open the Monday beforehand, and I do these streams on the last Friday of every month. Now, back to AK Miller. Beautiful piece. You asked specifically about the realistic, like how realistic your orchestral programming is. It was pretty good. I'd say it was pretty decent. There are a couple moments that stick out. The biggest issues would be balance. There's sometimes where like the string section should really sound a bit bigger and sound a little more lush. Single oboe versus strings and octaves. Those strings are going to take a much larger presence. Then there's a moment around one. There we go. Right there, around 120, your cymbal cuts off abruptly. I don't know if that's your sound library or what, but if it's your sound library, you can't really change that performance. You're going to want to at least fade it out manually so that it doesn't have that abrupt thing. Cymbals don't die out like that. They roll off gradually. Hear that? So that one was a bit jarring. So I would make sense. I would be careful with that. And other than that, there are just a few moments of phrasing with like the strings playing the melody where when a musician performs, there's going to be shifts in dynamics. Like it's going to get louder and softer. There's going to be some notes are played softer a little bit harder than others. One of the best ways to make your music more performance and expressive is to sing along with it. Ba-da-da-da, da-da-da, ba-da-dum. And then try to match those shifts in like volume and expression with your MIDI performance. But all in all, this is great. I was listening, the reverb sounded decent, the panning was spot on, just a few moments with balance, that issue with the cymbal, and then a couple moments where you could give the woodwinds and the strings a little more breathing room. Let it sound a little more like they're singing. That's really the goal behind a realistic MIDI performance, is to just add that human element. And the most human element is the way the instrument sings, if that makes sense. But wonderful job. I love the theme. Very memorable. Your arrangement is wonderful. I love the way that it moves around the orchestra. Your use of the woodwinds is beautiful and fun. The pizzicato strings, the sustained strings, using the different techniques and textures. Well done, my friend. You have great use of contrast. Nice little structure. Fun little waltz. So I hope that helps. So I said main tricks for you. Try singing along a little bit and matching that. Fix the balance a little bit. Those strings should feel a little wider compared to the other instruments. Fix that cymbal. And other than that, you're doing very well. It's a solid mock-up. All right. 3 more to go. Here we go. Woo! How's everybody doing? All right, I'm just gonna take a little break for a sec. I'm gonna take a breather. I'm gonna drink my energy drink a little bit. Don't forget to leave a like, people. Appreciate you. What's everybody up to? You guys having a good day? You guys having a good week? Let's see. Let me do a couple quick ads. This has been a very slow month for me, sales-wise. So if you all are interested, my Emotions and Music book is on sale. I have a brand new book, Sound Design for Composers. Full disclosure, this is based off a free series. All right, I know I said it's a slow month for me. I get in trouble with like my business like planner all the time because I know I shouldn't feel guilty. These are high quality things, but I know I have I have a very poor background. My dad had 5 kids and was putting my mom through college all on a salary of like 50 grand a year. So things are very tight. He was the only working parent. So I come from a tight financial background. So I am always aware of other people. So all that to say, this class, Synthcraft, is part of a free series. If you go to YouTube, I've got, I think, like 19 videos out already. There's only going to be 21 in the series, but you can see I've been putting this out. It's a free series. You'll find it in the playlist, Intro to Synthesize. There's 19 videos out so far. But if you want the workbook that accompanies it, that teaches you how to use any synth, how to make sounds, it's really cool. This is brand new, $25. Composer's Roadmap is a free book. How to Balance the Modern Orchestra. Oh, that'd be a good one for our friend who just did this. A.K. Miller would be a good book for that. Musical Storyteller, that's my textbook. Portraying Emotions in Music. This textbook is probably what I'm most proud of. It's about 400 pages long. I got physical copies available on Amazon. It's right here. It's a guide that teaches you A to Z how to compose music and tell stories and capture emotions and stuff. Emotions in Music, I'm going to be updating this one soon. That's next on my list of things I want to do book-wise, is I'm going to overhaul this book. And just like I did with the textbook, anyone who had purchased a previous version is just going to get the update for free. I don't believe in charging multiple times. Then I've got notes and stuff and other things. So these are all ways you can do it. If you're interested in private lessons, I've got space for a couple more students. All right, there we go. I think I've caught my breath. I've got my second wind. My day's going well. Thank you, Tamashi. My week and month have been going well. Been keeping busy, been having a lot more fun. I haven't been as active with the live streams lately, mostly because I've been using Fridays to spend more time working on my music and the things I want to write. So it's been really nice getting back into that. But thank you for asking. Let's dive back in, shall we? Four more pieces. Ryogi requests, I would like to get any feedback that you can provide me, and the question is about the piece overall. Is this week from melody or harmony till orchestration? Thank you in advance for your help. Additional information, I am a rookie composer that started from literal zero, everything related to music from August last year. Ooh, this is like almost a year update. Let's see what you've learned, my friend. That was beautiful. You put this first year to great use, Ryogi. All right, so you didn't ask for anything specific. You said that the piece was weak. It's definitely not a weak piece. Generalized things that you could benefit from is don't be afraid to strip back the layers a little bit. This entire time you had a constant rhythmic pa. It's a short piece, so I mean, if this had gone on for like 5 minutes, you'd want it'd really be important. But don't be afraid. You're moving things around a lot. That's fantastic. But don't be afraid to strip things back to get a lot more simple. As you're building in texture, right before the climax, have a moment where you just strip it all away. You have just the melody and just the barest bones accompaniment. Composers like John Williams and Joe Hisaishi don't even use the full string section all the time. And One Summer's Day, for a good chunk of the arrangement, Joe Hisaishi just uses violins and violas. They do the vast majority. They play the chords in like Debussy and stuff. So don't be afraid to go small. That would be my recommendation. But this is very, very well done, especially for a rookie composer, like you said. Now, unfortunately, we're at the point of the stream where my brain is getting a little fried. So without something specific, I don't have too much to offer. Other than just generalized encouragement. Well done, my friend. Keep it up. And yeah, I hope you submit some more pieces in the future. Well done. I'd say, like I said, don't be afraid to change up textures a little bit. That would be my best thing. And don't be afraid to repeat things and develop things a little bit slower. You'll get more mileage out of your ideas with that. Well done. Sorry if that wasn't a lot. Aditya, one of the regulars of the channel. Can you hear it's just the piano? Probably going to tell you that's a simple yes or no answer, so there's probably not going to be a lot of feedback here unless you've got something, because I happen to know you are in the... Tamashi is spamming a lot of comments. How's your day? Okay, I really want to hear your music. I've got some to share. Yes, I do have some music to share in a moment. I'm trying to get my latest piece recorded. That's been a bit tricky. And once it's recorded, though, I will be sharing the recordings. And I've got a couple fun orchestral arrangements that I will be uploading to my my studio channel this month, because I need to get better at sharing my music. I teach you guys music. I have you guys share your music with me every month, and then I don't share mine very frequently. So I got to get better at that. But yeah, I've got a couple orchestral pieces coming out soon, hopefully next month, that I can share with you. Dan Lipcan 55. I am Ryogi. Thank you. Wonderful. Glad to be helpful. Really great ending. So Tamashi really likes it. For my piece, no matter what happens, don't pause it and up your volume. All right. Little concerning. Well done, Ryogi. That was for your fourth piece. That's incredible. All right. Awesome. So Aditya says, don't pause the music and crank the volume. Let's do it.
There's nothing like the American Express platform.
All right, so we got some ads. So Aditya, with your question, can you tell it's just piano? LOL. Okay, so is this gonna be a joke piece? I'm looking forward to it. Can you tell it's just piano? Probably yeah. If that's the question, that's the issue with like yes or no questions. I'm not gonna be able to provide too much value, but I'll at least be able to tell you how I enjoy it. My question is, do you hear it? Let's find out. Okay, so it's a joke piece. All right, here we go. This will be fun.
JDPower.com/awards.
Is it the Dia Theory again? Tamashi says, this is not my piece. It's different. It's paused right now. So is this not the piece? This is the piece I was given. This is you. It says it's paused. It's not playing. All right, so Tamashi. All right, I'm just going to hit play again. All right. Wait, why is it a different piece? Oh, I was playing the previous submission. My bad. I'm sorry, guys. Again. We're going on like 2 hours of this stream. It's been a long day. Apologies. Starting over. Here we go. Tamashi's piece. nice. Dude, come on, it was so beautiful. Wait, did you reverse it? I'm be honest, I got no idea, dude. I got no idea what that was. It just reversed? It sounded like you played it and then reversed it. The first half was beautiful. That second half's got my teeth on edge a little bit. That's what I thought. It's the same track, just add a pitch shifter and some automation. Interesting. So that's a fun piece. That's what we call like an artistic choice. It's a fun time to play around with. Pitch shifters are a lot of fun. They're a good tool to play with. Not reversed, just pitch shifter and some automation. Those can be fun to play with. But yeah, that's a fun way to experiment. Unfortunately, it's outside my wheelhouse. I don't really have a lot of feedback to provide, other than it's fun. It's a cool experiment. So thank you, my friend, for submitting. The first half, very beautiful. Beautiful piano arrangement. Like a gamelan? I could see how it has some tributes similar to a gamelan, but I wouldn't say it sounded like a gamelan. So for those of you who are wondering, a gamelan is an indigenous instrument to, I believe, Southeast Asia. Beautiful, almost a little bit like a kalimba. Beautiful sound. Hey, 23, welcome, my friend. Thanks for stopping by, Ryogi. And Aditya, wonderful submission as always, my friend. It's always cool to see what you're doing. You've got such a wide variety of things you like to work with. It's always fun. Which pitch shifter did you use? That'd be fun to see and play around with myself. E-Enthusiast and Lurch. This, I believe, is our very first time getting a joint effort submitted. This is a song I made together with my best friend over 2 weeks, and we both think we did a really good job. The song is longer than 4 minutes, but the timestamp picks up at the part they'd like feedback on. In the section of the song I want to show you, we tried to build a tense and dramatic mood, and it's supposed to work like a finale. My question is, do you like the melody structures, and do you think the almost never repeating patterns are good or bad at conveying the intense atmosphere? Let's give it a listen. Through Composed is always a risk, but rewarding if you get it right. Ooh, thanks, Tamashi. It's giving like Blade Runner vibes. That works. Well done, both of you. So, yes, to answer your questions, this functions. I think the lack of like repetition works really, really well at getting the intended effect. So you describe this as being what was the technical term is through composed, no repeating themes. This can be tricky to accomplish, but what works well is each individual theme is self-contained. That means it has a beginning and an end, and it references itself before moving on. So it's like a series of a bunch of short little pieces. They have a beginning and an end before moving on to the next one. And then there's subtle transition phases between each one, like the big like, and the transitions all share similar material, which helps glue it all together. You use similar instruments, similar keys, everything kind of fits together well and makes sense. So yes, you and your friends did do a really good job. Well done. I think it works and fits the kind of structure you were looking for, and again, because each individual melody and theme is self-contained without losing momentum in the transitions, which is key. Well done, my friends. I wish I had more to provide. You didn't ask anything other specific, though, so I don't feel too guilty. So to answer your question, do they work? Yes, they work. Last submission. My brain is almost fried, but what another usual of the channel, Shib Shankar. All right, requests. Near the end, I wanted the violins and horns to sound like Moonlight, but it's too overpowering. Okay, so my check would be, all right, violin horns sound like Moonlight, but if it's too overpowering, my guess would be it's probably the software. Horns and violins can be used to create very subtle effects. I can take a look. You usually submit sheet music, so I'll check the sheet music. But yeah, it's using especially like a solo horn or even two horns together playing piano with the violins being very soft. That should be perfectly fine. How do you write sequences which build up in tension, upwards and downward motion? Tension basically comes down to energy. So any of those 9 parameters we discussed earlier, strategies for building tension is just strategies for building energy. Tension is typically described using harmony, but you can use rhythm to speed up the tempo, speed up the rhythmic values, stuff like that. How to come up with ideas, how to, again, refocus after being exhausted from composing. Taking breaks. Honestly, taking breaks. That's what it comes down to. Take a break, watch some movies, go for a walk, do something. Take a day or 2 off of your work before coming back. And then refocusing, I find timers work well and having goals. So this is a little bit of a rant. If any of you have ever wondered about getting into a flow state, you may have heard about this. The idea of a flow state where you just gotta hit flow and the enjoyment of the activity itself becomes its own reward. That's technically the official definition of flow. But to get into a flow state, my master's degree is actually from the University of Michigan, and I was trained to be a therapist. There are 8 components to flow. There are clear goals. There are immediate feedback. Challenge meets the skills. There is the ability to focus, the ability to concentrate. It's very similar, but subtle differences. Loss of self-consciousness. Time slippage, which is more of a sign of flow than actually getting into it. And then what is number 8? And I'll break down each of these in a moment. Self-consciousness, time slippage, concentration, and control. These are the 8 components of flow. The more of these you can control for, the easier you will be able to refocus on your composition and just really start building momentum. All right, clear goals. At any given point, you should know what you're working on and what you need to work on next. So for example, I am working on section 8 of my arrangement right now. I am focusing on the strings, or I'm focusing on like arranging the melody. Once I have the melody, my next step is going to be arranging the bass line. At any given point, you know what you're working on and what you're going to work on next. So have a to-do list. Have a clear, structured goal of what you need to work on. Feedback. This does not mean someone is providing feedback. This means at any given point, you can tell if you are getting closer to or further away from your goal. All right, so if my goal is to work on the melody, all right, I should have a way of telling, am I making progress or not? That's basically, can you tell if you're making progress or not? If not, make sure you find a way to do that. Challenge meets the skill. Not so challenging that it becomes overwhelming, but not so easy that it becomes boring. All right? Focus is the ability, nothing else is demanding your attention. Your task is your priority. So if you have something else that you need to prioritize, maybe you have a meeting coming up, maybe you have a phone call you need to make, anything else that is a priority for you, take care of it before you work on this. Or just tell yourself you're not going to do it until after. Either way, you have no other priorities. This comes to concentration. There are no distractions. So while focus has to do more about things that are important, things that are priorities, make sure you don't have anything else that's demanding your attention right now. Concentration has more to do with like small distractions. All right, put your phone away. Turn off your ringtone. Turn turn off the internet. Whatever you do to make sure that nothing small that's a non-priority can distract you. So focus has to do with important things and making sure that they don't conflict. Concentration means small things and distractions are not there. Also, self-consciousness has to do with not thinking too much about what you're doing. Time slippage, these are things that just kind of happen with flow. But control is you feel any given point. You have some level of control over what you are doing. And this idea of control usually comes from these. At any given point, know what you're working on and what you need to work on next. Have some ability of telling whether or not you're making progress. Make sure that you're not working on something that's too overwhelming or too boring. Make sure that you don't have anything big no other big priorities are demanding your attention. And make sure that you've removed any small distractions. Take care of that, and you'll be able to find refocus pretty quickly. That's just a small little like psych lecture. But then I feel like there is a mixing issue but can't figure it out, and how is it? So let's listen to it. Let's get some thoughts and see what we can share. Okay, first off, Shipshaker, 5 minutes, 21 seconds. I'm sorry, that's past the time limit though. And since you did ask a question specifically about the end, I'm just going to skip right here. So this is the piano concerto. We've heard this a couple times. Let's see what you've done. I believe that's where your last submission ended, so let's see what we've added. Dude, incredible. You've made some significant progress on this. Beautiful work. As always. Okay, so let's see. What can I provide here? So first off, mixing. Didn't sound like there's too much of a mixing issue with it. I believe you use Note Performer for your performances. They don't usually have mixing issues. One thing that might happen is a little bit of clipping. So a simple compressor on that can help quite a bit. You do lessons with me, so this is something we can discuss during a lesson itself. I provided a little bit on this. In terms of how is this, this is beautiful. This is well done. Your orchestration blows me away as always. One thing I would say is, as of yet, I don't know if this technically qualifies as a piano concerto. So a concerto features a soloist by definition. So far, the piano is being used beautifully, but it hasn't been a featured soloist. So normally in a concerto, like the traditional sonata concerto being an example, you have the main theme played by the orchestra, then the main theme played specifically by the piano. So you have the repeating exposition form. Exposition is played by the orchestra, then it repeats and it's played by the soloist with very sparse accompaniment. So far, the piano has been used as a beautiful member of the orchestra, but we haven't really had that feeling of the piano is the star and the orchestra is just supporting them. So that's the one little thing I'd say about Picky, but that doesn't reflect poorly on the piece. This is very, very beautiful. Yes, it's very well done. And with that, my friends, I wish I had more of an energy, but I wish I had more to share, but I think that brings us to the end of a stream. Thank you to our wonderful 13 submissions this month. I appreciate each of you. This beautiful pieces to listen to. Thank you to the regular Shipshankar and Aditya for submitting again. You guys submit, I think, more than most people, anyone else. You guys, it's always fun to hear what you guys are working on. Thank you to everyone who else has submitted. It was wonderful hearing some brand new pieces, hearing some incredible early works by some people, and getting to talk about some wonderful, fun projects. I will be sharing some of my own music next month. I will be showcasing some new orchestral arrangements of some pieces I've been working on, some choir arrangements I've been working on, and just putting more of my stuff out there. Again, new content coming. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel. You can check out all the ways we want to support the channel. Lots of great educational resources on my website. Become a channel member. And the next live stream where I will be doing free feedback will be July 31st. Set a reminder for the 27th. That's when I will be accepting submissions, and I will be only accepting the first 10 or 15 submissions. Probably just 10 to 13. I probably won't do more than this. I think a 2-hour stream is about the sweet spot. This is where I start to lose energy. But thank you very much to everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you in the next video. All right? Bye-bye.